Well, hello there, and today we'll be covering the top 10 GeoGuessr tips for Mexico. Tip number 1. Mexico is the main country in the Americas to have octagonal poles. You can get exceptions in Colombia, but when you come across these poles, you should go Mexico in most instances. Tip number 2. Mexico uses Alto on its stop signs. This is different to all the countries in the Caribbean and South America. Guatemala uses Alto but will have its own unique car, whereas Costa Rica is always a trekker. Tip number 3. Mexico uses a lot of black water tanks. This is another sneaky hint to lean towards Mexico if you're unsure where in the Americas you are. Tip number 4. Being familiar with all the Mexican states can help you be more familiarized with the tips or findings that are specific to a state or a group of states. And as you can tell, if you can memorize this, I reckon it'll be very useful. Tip number 5. Learning the area codes can be very helpful in many cases. There is no clear pattern, but can be very useful to separate stuff like the northwest, which is 6, to the northeast, which is 8. I would definitely recommend learning these as it can really help you narrow it down in which part of Mexico you are in. Tip number 6. When you come across a dry, white sandy environment with these cobblestone-like walls and this type of architecture, I highly recommend sending the states in and around Yucatan. Be aware of these Beatty cobblestone walls in the northeast. I recommend using a combination of environmental and architectural factors when considering this region. Tip number 7. Mexico has too many plates and consistently changes them for every state. A big shout out to Karo for helping me out in this video. He's an absolute legend for doing this. Right, so let's go back to the plates, and Sinaloa can have this unique red dot in the middle. So if you come across a red dot plate like this on Street View, I highly recommend going Sinaloa. Just to get this across, you can see other plates in Sinaloa. So these ones that I'm showing you are just examples of what plates you can get. Just because you don't see the red dot does not mean it's Sinaloa. Chiapas has two distinctive plates. The first one will appear to have orange, red, green, and blue on each corner. So 4 different colours on each corner of the plate, whereas the plate below will have mostly orange in the middle and an orange kind of like line at the bottom. And both of these can be quite distinguishable on Street View to confirm you are in Chiapas or the vehicle is from Chiapas. Oaxaca's plate is by far the most distinctive Mexican plate out there, and the best way to remember it is Mexico flag-like plate, go Oaxaca. Baja California can also be confirmed by looking at these two plates. The first example appears to have a blue top with a green bottom, and that can look quite distinctive on Street View, and so can the bottom one, but instead of there being blue on the top, there is orange at the top. Here is a website that you guys can check out in your own time. Karo showed me this website as well. It has the most up-to-date license plates, and you can choose which ones you would like to learn. I also recommend checking out Havrid's Guide as well, and I'll link both of those down in the description. Tip number 8. Taxis can be very useful for guessing the correct states in Mexico. Here are 2 examples of Mexico taxis. You have one further down and one right next to us, and generally they love pink in Mexico City. So that's a good way to remember it. You can get many different types in many different Mexican states. And a big shout out to Caro once again for sharing this with me. And yeah, so we can quickly go through some examples that stand out to me the most. So we have the Chihuahua white and red car, or more specifically the red strip. You've also got the Veracruz red bonnet. You've got the Zacatecas blue roof. And you've got other examples here like the Tabasco kind of like yellow-orange taxi with the white strip at the bonnet. And there are many others. So feel free to look at this in your own time. And yeah, this could be very helpful to pinpoint where you are in more urban Mexico rounds. Tip number 9. Once again, a big thanks to Kara for helping me out in this. But in this instance, we have these canals. And when you see canals in Mexico and it's super flat like this, there's a very, very high chance that you are either in Sonora or Sinaloa. Here is another example of what it could look like, but generally it's these big massive canal systems in very flat environments where there's a lot of farmland around. If we go onto the map, Here are the two locations. We have Sonoma and Sinaloa. The most common place which will have these canals will be Ciudad Obregón, but you can find these across Sonora and all the way down into Sinaloa as well. So keep that in mind when you see these canals. And finally, tip number 10. On street signs, you can come across these postal area codes. And if we go to the next slide, Karo has shared me all the codes for each state. And as you can tell, the main pattern with this is the later the state is in the alphabet, the bigger the number is. The only example is Mexico City's state, whereas all the others are in alphabetical order from 20 to 99. And if we go back to the previous slide, we see that it says 23. And as you can tell, if we go to 23, that is distinctive to Baja California Sur. And yeah, that is all. I hope you found this video useful. And a big shout out for Carol for helping me out. It really means a lot. And yeah, the next tip video will be the USA. And yeah, I will see you next time. Yeah, of course.